access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy for all. This gathering is a platform to consolidate commitments, announce new partnerships, and drive momentum towards the 2030 goal. Together with the private sector, development partners, financial institutions, and civil society, we can bridge the energy gap through actionable energy compacts. At this summit, we also hope to get endorsement for the Dar es Salaam Energy Declaration to guide our efforts. It is for this reason that I salute Presidents Adesina of the African Development Bank, Ajay Bank of the World Bank, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the allied partners for ensuring the successful convening of this important and historical summit. I also wish to thank the honorable ministers responsible for energy, finance, and foreign affairs for diligent preparations. To achieve the ambitious targets outlined in our national energy compacts, which will be soon presented, we African leaders need to commit our governments to address critical bottlenecks across the energy value chain as outlined in the Compact's action plans. As we welcome the commitments by the African Development Bank and the World Bank and other financial institutions to scale up financing and technical assistance for active participation of the private sector, we African leaders commit to create favorable investment environment through policy reforms, transparent procurement, and innovative financing mechanisms. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our gathering here in Dar es Salaam, with Mission 300 as our agenda, sets us on right track to realize the goal of universal access to energy for all. Together, we can light up Africa, transform Africa's energy landscape, and empower generations. Thank you all for your kind attention, and I wish you all fruitful deliberation.
Africa needs to create millions of jobs, as Ajay just noted. And this effort is ultimately about creating those jobs and allowing for that dignity for those youth that are entering the labor force, as Ajay noted. Every year to do so, we will need to replace expensive diesel generators as the source of power for so many African small businesses with cheap, always-on electricity. And that is what Mission 300 is all about. It would be easy to be skeptical about whether or not this, the largest public-private partnership on the continent today, designed to lift up hundreds of millions of people, could actually achieve the ambitious targets that Ajay and Akin and all of you respected heads of state have set for us. I believe there are three reasons why this initiative will succeed when perhaps others over that 140-year history have failed. First, Mission 300 is led by you, African leaders. Your compacts, your commitments, your targets, and most importantly, your absolute determination to implement the policy reforms that you are signing on to publicly today offer hope and clarity for the private sector, for philanthropy, and for your development partners. Thank you, and we will follow your lead. Second, Mission 300 is catalyzing extraordinary concessional resources at a time of absolute fiscal need on this continent. That is a testament to the leadership of the two banks, and Ajay, to you in particular, for bringing us together and kicking this off. I think it will take your private sector background and your determination to hold us all to account to achieve our targets in order to be successful. But to put this level of resources into a single effort with a single quantitative, measurable set of outcomes gives us hope and inspires transformation. This effort is, in fact, a public-private philanthropic partnership. It is different from other initiatives I've been a part of. Just in the last 6 months, watching how the teams at the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and each of your nations are collaborating openly, sharing data, using GIS planning to site new locations for mini-grids and other new technology solutions, and being open to new technology solutions that today are at a price point where this vision of success is affordable and possible, and in fact the least cost way to provide universal electrification, gives me hope that this will in fact be different and be successful. Mission 300 is an opportunity to work together and to work together differently. We pledge support as helpers and quiet helpers at every level of this project to ensure that decades from now, people look back on yesterday and today and say what happened in Dar es Salaam, much like turning the streetlights on in 1908, transformed a continent and transformed generations for the future. Thank you.
I am extremely grateful to you, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, for honoring our invitation, for being here in such large and unprecedented numbers. It shows the high priority and the political commitment you place on expanding the access of your populations to electricity. Access to electricity is critical for Africa's economic growth. The lack of adequate electricity reduces the GDP of Africa by 2 to 4%. Your Excellencies, since the African Development Bank Group launched the New Deal on Energy for Africa in 2016, at the start of my first term as President of the African Development Bank, working with all our partners, significant progress has been made in expanding access to electricity. The share of the population with access to electricity in Africa significantly increased from 39% in 2015 to 52% in 2024. The African Development Bank Group has supported over 25 million people to have access to electricity. However, despite the progress being made, Africa still has 571 million people without electricity, accounting for 83% of the global population without electricity. Over 1 billion people do not have access to clean cooking solutions, which negatively impacts on women's health, children's health, and lives. We must take decisive actions to further drive down these numbers, and that is why Ajay Banga, President of the World Bank Group, and I joined together to launch the Mission 300 with the goal of expanding access of 300 million people in Africa to electricity by 2030. Mission 300 has grown into a global movement, and we were joined by the African Union, Commission, several global partners, including the Rockefeller Foundation, the Sustainable Energy for All of the United Nations, the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, and we are not alone. We have just been joined as well by the Islamic Development Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the French Development Agency, Agence Française de Développement, and several bilateral development agencies. I would like to thank you and to say we need your personal leadership to get this done. Together, let us decisively use Mission 300 to deliver 300 million people in Africa with access to electricity in all your countries by 2030. The African Development Bank's $20 billion Desert to Power program will complement Mission 300 and develop 10,000 megawatts of solar power across 11 Saharan countries and provide access to electricity for an additional 250 million people. Therefore, the Mission 300 and the Desert to Power working collectively will provide 550 million Africans with electricity. That, Your Excellencies, will deliver universal access to electricity for Africa. What a difference that will make for your respective countries, and what a difference that will make for Africa. You will be remembered, Your Excellencies, as the presidents who gave your countries 100% access to electricity. You will be remembered as the presidents who said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Thank you very much, and asante sana. We will not succeed, Your Excellencies, if we do not work closely and more openly with more space for the private sector. And that is why we are delighted that several leading CEOs from around the world have joined us today. Critical reforms will be needed to expand the share of renewables, improve functioning and performance of utilities, transparency in licensing, power purchase agreements, and predictable tariffs regimes that reflect the cost of production. The private sector will also need to play a critical role to expand mini-grids and off-grid systems to reach millions of people without access to grid-based power in rural areas. Our collective effort is to support you, our heads of state and government, to develop and to implement clear actions embedded in country-led national energy compacts, your compacts, to deliver on your visions for electricity in your respective countries. The African Development Bank and the World Bank have developed a very clear path to achieving the 300 million access goal. Together, the African Development Bank and the World Bank will commit $40 billion towards the Mission 300. With $18.2 billion from the African Development Bank and $22 billion from the World Bank Group. And Ajay will talk about that when he comes on board. It is an unprecedented alliance. Thank you very much, Ajay. We couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much. And thank you very much to Raj Shah, President of Rockefeller Foundation, for providing critical technical assistance, support of $20 million that made the preparation of the country energy compacts possible. Thank you very much to you and your colleagues. Your Excellencies, support for Mission 300 keeps pouring in. Yesterday, at the first day of the summit, several development partners made huge announcements in support of Mission 300. The President of the Islamic Development Bank Group announced $2.65 billion in support. The President of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank announced $1.5 billion in support. The President of the OPEC Fund announced $1 billion in support. And the French government will be making a major announcement today. We are confident that other development partners here and elsewhere will join us and announce their respective commitments either today and after.
Over the past year, we've worked alongside leaders of your countries to develop country-specific plans. These are rooted in data, they're endorsed at the highest levels by you, and they are aligned with very clear goals of reform. These plans focus on affordable power generation, on expanding connections, and on regional integration and regional electrical markets. They aim to boost the efficiency of utilities, they aim to attract private investment, and the idea is deliver reliable, sustainable electricity. These are going to require political will, persistence, and a long-term vision. So amid fiscal challenges, governments will also need the support to meet these infrastructure goals. And that is where the IMF, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, all our partners that Akin referred to, that's the role we can play to help you free up resources. But for the private sector, a lot of our friends and colleagues who are in this room, this effort represents both a challenge and an opportunity. We need your innovation, we need your efficiency, we need your people, we need your creativity, we need your capacity to scale. I have a very simple agenda for all of us here, heads of state, who are showing your participation and your support for us. We need every ounce of your support. But the reality is, your people need it even more than all of us do. Over the next decade, 360 million young people in Africa will be ready to enter the workforce. That same decade, the African system is expected to only offer jobs to 150 million of these, leaving 3 out of every 5 young people without the opportunity of a job which gives you not just earning, but dignity. And I think if Africa is to achieve its objectives of taking advantage of its demographic dividend over this coming period, then all of us need to change this idea, because forecasts are not destiny. Forecasts are not destiny. We can change this. We can help those 3 out of 5 people. And while journeys are fueled by hope, the reality is they are only realized by deeds. It is deeds that we are here together to discuss.